In a small dusty village surrounded by thick green forests, there lived a girl named Aminata. She was just 17, poor, and alone in this world. Her parents died when she was 5, taken by a sickness no one could stop. Since then, she grew up in an old orphanage made of mud walls and rusty iron sheets. It was not a place of love. The caretakers didn't care. The food was little, the beatings were many. But Aminata had something stronger than pain, a heart full of dreams. She loved the quiet of early mornings, when the other orphans were still asleep. She would go behind the orphanage, sit near the broken fence, and watch the sun rise slowly from behind the trees. That soft light made her feel safe, made her believe there could be something better waiting for her. But everything changed when a royal announcement came. A man with shiny shoes and a loud voice rode into their village on a horse. He stood in the middle of the market and read from a scroll. By the order of His Highness Prince Moana, every girl aged 16 to 20 must be present at the royal choosing ceremony. The prince will pick his bride. The people cheered. The girls giggled. The mothers smiled proudly. But not Aminata. Her heart sank. She didn't want to be picked, not by a prince, not by anyone. She knew how the palace worked. She had heard the stories, how girls were chosen for their beauty, how they were dressed like dolls and forced to smile, even when they were sad. And those who didn't obey? They were never seen again. Aminata didn't want to disappear behind gold gates. She didn't want to be chosen for her skin, her eyes, or her smile. She wanted to live her life, her way. She had one thing people loved, her beauty. Even in dirty clothes with no fancy oils or gold beads in her hair, she looked like the moon on a calm night. Her skin was deep and smooth, her eyes big and bright like stars, and her face, it was soft like rain. Even the other girls were jealous, and she knew if the prince saw her, he would choose her. That night she sat near the fire in silence. The younger kids were asleep. Her heart was beating fast. Her fingers touched the edge of the knife hidden in her dress. She didn't want to do this, but she had no choice. With tears in her eyes, Aminata pressed the blade against her cheek. She closed her eyes tight, whispered a prayer, and pulled. The pain was sharp. Her scream was louder than thunder. Blood ran down her face. Her cheek burned like fire. But she didn't stop. By morning, Aminata's face had changed forever. The scar was deep, red, ugly. Her beauty was gone. She thought she was safe now. No prince would choose a girl with a ruined face. But fate is strange. 3 days later, she was dragged to the royal court with the others. Her face still healing, her head bowed low, she stood among the line of girls. And when the prince came, tall, dark, wearing robes made of silk, his eyes scanned them all. He walked slowly, looking at each girl. Some smiled shyly, some couldn't meet his gaze. Then he stopped in front of her. Aminata didn't look up. "Your name?" he asked. She stayed quiet. He lifted her chin with 2 fingers, and when their eyes met, the prince smiled. "This is the one," he said. "She will be my bride." Aminata couldn't breathe. The prince had just chosen her with a scar that still hurt and bled sometimes. Her legs felt weak. The other girls gasped. Even the royal guards looked confused. She wanted to run, to scream, to hide, but her feet stayed frozen in place and her voice refused to come out. "Your Highness," one of the palace elders whispered, stepping forward. "Perhaps you didn't see clearly. This girl's face—" "I saw clearly," the prince said, his voice calm but firm. "Beauty is not the skin. This one, her eyes do not lie." Aminata's hands were shaking. The elder stepped back. The guards nodded and led her away gently, while the other girls stared in shock and jealousy. She was taken inside the palace gates, huge iron doors taller than any tree she had ever seen. As they closed behind her, a strange silence fell over her heart. She didn't feel happy. She felt like a bird locked in a golden cage. The palace was made of white stone and polished wood. Everything smelled like perfume and spices. Servants bowed. Dancers moved like waves. Music floated through the halls. But to Aminata it all felt fake, like a place she didn't belong in. She was given a room bigger than the orphanage she grew up in. A maid named Zuba helped clean her wounds with warm water and honey. Zuba didn't speak much, but her hands were gentle and her eyes kind. "Why would he choose me?" Aminata asked her, voice low. Zuba paused. "Prince Mwana sees things others don't." Aminata didn't believe that. She thought maybe it was a trick, a test, or maybe the prince wanted to punish her by making her the center of mockery. But no matter how much she asked, no one gave her answers. The next day she was brought to the prince again, this time in a private garden filled with red flowers and soft grass. He sat under a mango tree, wearing simple clothes, a carved wooden necklace around his neck. "You still look angry," he said as she stood before him. "I don't belong here," she replied, looking away. "You chose the wrong girl." "I chose exactly who I meant to," he said, picking a mango from the tree. "Sit, eat." She didn't move. "I know why you cut your face," he said after a pause. His voice was soft but serious. "I know. What the world does to girls who are too beautiful. I've seen it. I've heard the cries behind palace walls. You wanted to disappear. I understand." Aminata's eyes filled with tears. She didn't want to cry in front of him. But no one had ever said something so true about her before. "Why me?" she whispered. "There were prettier girls. Girls who smiled at you. Girls without this." She touched her scar. The prince stood and walked closer. "When I looked at you, I saw something real. Pain, strength, fire. You didn't dress yourself up to please me. You tried to hide. That tells me more than 1,000 smiles ever could." She looked up at him, confused. "So this is pity?" "No," he said, almost laughing. "This is respect." Aminata didn't know what to say. Her heart was beating again, fast and loud, but in a different way now. Over the next few days she saw more sides of the prince. He didn't act like a spoiled royal. He visited the kitchen, laughed with guards, asked people about their days. And every evening he spoke to her, not as a prince to a servant, but like a man trying to know someone for real. Still, doubt lived in her chest like a ghost. Until one night. She was walking in the hallway, her bare feet quiet on the stone floor, when she heard voices from the prince's council room. "The people won't accept her," one voice said. "She's not from any royal family. She's an orphan, and that scar—" "She is who I will marry," the prince answered firmly. "Let them talk." There was silence. Aminata stood in the shadows, hand over her mouth. He was fighting for her. The truth hit her like thunder. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't pity. This was real. The next morning, Aminata stood by the palace window, staring at the garden below. The sky was bright, birds sang, and the air smelled of blooming jasmine. But inside her, everything was storm. She had spent most of her life being ignored, beaten, or told she was nothing. Now suddenly she was being treated like someone who mattered. It didn't feel real. Her scar still throbbed when the wind hit it just right. It reminded her of what she did to escape attention, to protect herself. And yet here she was, caught in the center of every eye. Zuba brought in her breakfast, and for the first time, Aminata didn't ignore her. "Why does he care?" she asked, slowly sipping the warm porridge. "Why doesn't he choose someone safe, someone from the noble families?" Zuba looked thoughtful as she placed a carved wooden bowl on the table. "The prince grew up inside walls like these, rich, clean, full of lies. He knows what fake looks. Like you're the first honest thing to ever walk into this palace." Aminata didn't respond, but her heart stirred. Later that day, she was summoned to the great hall. Her steps were slow, her hands sweating as she walked across shiny marble floors. Gold pillars lined the room, and giant red curtains hung from the high ceiling. She felt like a tiny pebble in a sea of royalty. All the ministers were there. Nobles in bright robes stood in groups, whispering behind their fans. The Queen Mother sat on her throne, lips tight, eyes sharp. Prince Moana entered last, dressed not in royal silks, but in simple dark robes. He looked different today, more serious. He took Aminata's hand and guided her to the center of the hall. The Queen Mother's voice was cold. "Is this truly your decision, Moana?" "It is," he said. "I will marry Aminata." Gasps filled the room. One old man dropped his staff in shock. "She's a commoner," another minister said. "An orphan, and that scar—" "Her scar is her story," the prince interrupted. "You hide your shame behind gold rings and empty titles. She wears her truth with no fear." The Queen Mother's face hardened. "You know what the people will say, that a scarred orphan seduced the prince, that she used pity to enter this palace." "I don't care what they say," the prince replied. "I care about what's right." Aminata wanted to scream. Her throat was tight. She felt eyes digging into her like knives, but she stood tall even with her heart racing. A few ministers walked out in protest. The Queen Mother sighed. "Then so be it, but you must prove it to the people." Aminata turned to the prince, confused. "What does she mean?" "There's a royal tradition," he said quietly. "A bride must walk through the capital village, open-faced, uncovered, so that all the people may see who will sit beside the prince." Aminata froze. She had worked so hard to hide. Now she was being told to show her face, her scar, her pain. "To everyone? I can't," she whispered. "You can," he said gently. "You don't have to be beautiful for them. Just be strong. Just be you." The next day the walk began. Aminata wore a long blue dress, plain but graceful. Her hair was tied back, and her face was uncovered. The scar stretched across her left cheek like a slash of red thunder. People lined the streets. Some whispered, some pointed, a few laughed. "Why her?" someone muttered. "She's not even pretty," another said. Aminata heard every word. Her fingers clenched, her eyes burned, but she kept walking. Then something unexpected happened. A little girl ran forward from the crowd and handed her a flower. "You look strong," the girl said, smiling. Then a woman shouted, "I see myself in her." Another voice added, "She is not hiding. That's braver than any royal I know." Cheers began to rise. One by one, people started clapping. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Some dropped to their knees in respect. By the time she reached the palace gates again, the crowd had turned. They weren't mocking her anymore, they were celebrating her. And when the prince stood at the steps, arms open, Aminata ran to him, not because he was a prince, but because for the first time she felt seen and accepted. That night the palace glowed with celebration. Drums echoed through the halls, dancers moved like flames, and food covered every table. Roasted meat, sweet mango cakes, spicy soups, everything smelled rich and alive. Guests poured in from every corner of the kingdom, eager to meet the girl who had turned whispers into cheers. But Aminata didn't feel like celebrating. She sat in her chambers, staring at herself in the mirror. The scar was still there, faded slightly but still angry red. Her fingers traced it slowly. Part of her still hated it. Part of her didn't. It had saved her. It had freed her. But now, it also chained her to a future she didn't understand. There was a knock. Prince Moana stepped inside. He didn't wear a crown or a robe, just a loose white tunic and bare feet. "You're missing your party," he said with a soft smile. "I don't feel like dancing," she replied without looking at him. He sat beside her. "They loved you out there. They loved the story," she said, "not the girl. They saw pain and called it strength. But I still feel scared inside." "That's what real strength is," he said gently. "To keep going even when you're scared." She looked at him finally. "And what if I'm not enough? What if this whole thing is a mistake?" He took her hand. "Aminata, I didn't choose you out of pity. I chose you because you were the only one not trying to be chosen. You didn't want power, you didn't wear perfume or gold, you were just real." Before she could speak, a sudden noise rang from the hallway. Fast footsteps, voices raised, a guard burst in, panting. "Your Highness, there's trouble at the village border. Fires. Someone attacked the orphanage." Aminata's heart stopped. Her home, broken as it was, still held pieces of her soul. The kids, the small ones, her memories. "Take me there," she said instantly, rising to her feet. "It could be dangerous," the guard warned. "She's not staying," Moana said. "We go together." They rode through the night, Aminata on the prince's fastest horse, dressed in plain clothes again. The wind slapped her face, but her mind was only on one thing, saving the place where it all began. When they reached the edge of the village, orange flames lit up the sky. The orphanage was burning, screams echoing through the smoke. Villagers tried throwing water from small buckets, but the fire was too strong. Without waiting, Aminata jumped off the horse and ran inside. "Wait!" Mwana shouted, but she was already gone. Inside, the heat was unbearable. Smoke filled her lungs. But she knew the layout like the back of her hand. She rushed to the sleeping room, kicked open a door, and found 3 children crying in a corner. "It's me," she said, coughing. "Come, hold my hands." She wrapped 2 in her arms and guided the 3rd by hand. Step by step, she brought them out through the back exit, coughing hard as they escaped the smoke. The prince met them outside, quickly helping the kids to safety. Aminata fell to the ground, gasping. "You're mad," he said, kneeling beside her. "Completely mad. I couldn't let them die." He smiled, eyes full of something deep and warm. "And that's exactly why I chose you." Later, when the fire died down and the sun began to rise, a strange silence fell over the village. A messenger from the palace arrived, face pale, voice shaking. "Your Highness, the fire was not an accident." "What do you mean?" The prince asked. The messenger hesitated. Then he looked at Aminata. "Someone inside the palace gave the order." Aminata's stomach twisted. "Who?" Mwana asked. The answer came quietly, but it felt like thunder. The Queen Mother. Aminata's breath caught in her throat. The name hit her like a blade to the chest. The Queen Mother. The woman who had looked her up and down with cold judgment. The one who warned her, doubted her, questioned her worth in front of the whole court. She had done this? "No," the prince said, standing sharply. "That can't be right." The messenger didn't meet his eyes. The guards found letters, orders signed with her seal, gold sent to men in the shadows. And it wasn't just the fire. There were plans to make Aminata disappear quietly before the wedding. Silence dropped over them like a dark curtain. Aminata couldn't speak. Her mind raced back to every suspicious glance, every strange silence in the palace halls. The Queen Mother had never truly accepted her, but to plan her death. Mwana paced back and forth. His face was tight with fury, but his hands trembled. "She's my mother." "She tried to kill your future wife," the messenger said quietly. "The girl you stood beside." Mwana turned to Aminata. "I need to confront her. You stay here." "No," she said, her voice low but steady. "If she wanted me to be gone, then I'll face her myself." By nightfall, they were back at the palace. The halls felt different now, darker. The same walls that once felt too shiny, too big, now felt like they were closing in. Aminata walked beside the prince, her head held high, even though her knees shook. Her scar ached under the soft lights. Maybe it always would. The Queen Mother sat on her throne, calm, untouched by guilt. "You bring her back here?" she asked coldly. Mwana threw the charred, blackened letter onto her lap. "We know." She glanced at the paper, then looked back at them. "And what will you do now? Kill me?" "I want the truth," Mwana said. "Why?" The Queen Mother sighed like she was tired of pretending. "Because she is not fit to sit beside you. She's a nobody. She carries no bloodline, no name. She walks like a beggar and speaks like a rebel." "She saved lives last night," the prince snapped. "She walked through fire. What have you ever done for the people?" The Queen Mother stood slowly. "You think they love her?" "The people cheered because it was new. They will turn on her when the novelty fades. She will be the first reason they question your rule." "I'd rather be hated for love than be loved for lies," he replied. She turned her eyes to Aminata. "You should have stayed hidden. Do you know how many girls would kill for your place? And you scarred your own face to escape it." Aminata stepped forward. Her voice didn't rise, but her words cut clean. "Yes, I scarred my face because I didn't want to be another royal toy. I didn't want to be dressed like a doll and used for show. But he saw me when I didn't want to be seen. And now I see you too, not a queen. Just a scared woman hiding behind a title." The Queen Mother's jaw clenched. "You have no right to speak to me that way. I earned it with every burn on my skin." The court chamber went silent. Finally, Mwana spoke again. "You are removed from the council. You'll keep your title. Out of respect, but your power ends tonight." Guards stepped forward. The Queen Mother didn't fight, she didn't cry. She just turned her back and walked away with her head high. A queen no more. That night Aminata didn't sleep. She stood by her window, feeling the wind on her face, staring at the moon. The scar tingled, but for once it didn't feel like a wound. It felt like armor. The days that followed were quiet, but only on the surface. Aminata noticed how some servants no longer smiled. Some nobles whispered louder than before. The Queen Mother was gone from the council, yes, but her shadow still stretched long and cold through the palace halls. A snake doesn't stop hissing just because you cut off its tail. Still, preparations for the royal wedding began. The kingdom was buzzing. Cloth sellers came with silks from far lands. Drummers practiced every day outside the palace gates. Old women sang blessings to the skies, while gossip filled every corner of the capital. The orphan bride with the scar. The princes. Strange choice. Will she wear a veil to hide her shame? Aminata heard it all, but she had learned to walk through fire. Words were just smoke now. One afternoon, Zuba entered her room with a strange look on her face. "There's a man asking to see you," she said. "He's from your village. Says he knew your mother." Aminata's chest tightened. She hadn't heard that name, her mother, in years. All she had were faded memories of a soft voice, rough hands, and lullabies sung during storms. She followed Zuba to the courtyard. An old man stood by the fountain wearing a faded red robe and leaning on a wooden cane. His skin was wrinkled like old tree bark and his eyes carried storms. "You're Aminata," he said before she even spoke. "You look just like her." "Like who?" she asked, stepping forward. "Your mother, Safia. She was my niece." Her breath hitched. "You knew her?" The man nodded. "I knew everything. And there is something you must know too. Something that's been hidden." He reached into his robe and pulled out a small leather book, wrapped in cloth and tied with string. "This is your mother's journal," he said. "She wrote it in secret before she died. She never wanted the truth to die with her." Aminata took it with shaking hands. The leather was soft and worn. She opened the first page, eyes wide. Her mother's handwriting danced across the paper. Delicate but rushed. She began to read. "If you're reading this, my daughter, then fate has brought you where I couldn't. They will call you an orphan, a nobody. But you are not. You are born from royal blood, stolen and hidden to protect your life. You are not poor. You are not nothing. You are the fire they tried to bury." Aminata's world tilted. "What is this?" she whispered, flipping through more pages. The man watched her closely. "Your mother was the daughter of Prince Kwame, the brother of the current king, who was exiled after a royal betrayal. They erased his name. They erased hers. They feared their bloodline. But you survived." Aminata stared at him, trembling. "So you're telling me I am royalty?" "You always were," he said. "But your scar, ironically, freed you from the chains of their expectations. And now you return not just as the prince's bride, but as a missing piece of the royal line." Later that night she showed the journal to Prince Moana. He read it slowly, then looked at her with eyes full of awe. "Do you realize what this means?" he said. "I don't care about titles," she replied. "But I care about truth." He nodded. "We will bring this truth into light. But the truth can be dangerous." That same night, as they sat in the garden, a dart flew past Aminata's head, hitting the tree behind her with a quiet thunk. Assassins. 3 of them stepped from the shadows, blades drawn, eyes cold. But Moana was quick. Before the guards could arrive, he was already shielding her, sword in hand. A fight broke out. Blades clashed. One guard fell. Zuba screamed from the balcony. Aminata grabbed a rock and threw it at one of the attackers, hitting his arm. It gave the prince just enough time to strike him down. The last assassin, cornered and wounded, spat blood and hissed, "The Queen Mother may have stepped down, but she is not done yet." Then he slit his own throat. Aminata collapsed to her knees. The prince caught her, heart racing. "It's not over," he whispered. "No," she said, shaking. "It's just beginning." The palace was locked down by morning. Guards filled every hallway. The doors to the Queen Mother's chambers were sealed. Messengers rode out in every direction. warning allies, tightening borders. But whispers still crept through the walls. Like smoke, the queen plots in silence. The orphan bride is royalty. A war brews beneath the crown. Aminata sat by the window again, the same one where she once stared at the stars, doubting everything. But she wasn't the same girl anymore. The scar on her face had become more than a wound. It was a symbol, and the pain behind it now had purpose. Zuba entered quietly, holding a folded letter in her trembling hands. This came with no name, she said, slipped under the kitchen door. Aminata opened it slowly. The writing was sharp, rushed, filled with hate. You think you've won because of pity and blood, but you were never meant to wear a crown. Before you rise, you will fall. Come alone. To the old temple if you want to save what little you have left. There was no signature, but Aminata didn't need one. She knew. She wants to end it herself, she said, staring out toward the forest hills where the old temple stood. No guards, no prince, just me and her. Zuba's eyes widened. You're not going, are you? It's a trap. Yes, Aminata said, but I'm done running. She left at dusk, wearing no jewels, no fine clothes, just a simple dress and a blade hidden beneath it. The walk to the temple was quiet, the trees whispering above her, the wind cool against her cheek. The temple stood like a broken giant, stone pillars cracked by time, vines curling up its sides. She stepped inside, heart pounding, eyes sharp. The Queen Mother was already there, standing before the altar, dressed in black. I knew you'd come, she said, not turning around. I'm not afraid of you, Aminata replied. You should be, she said, finally facing her. Because you've ruined everything. My son was meant to marry a queen, someone bred for power, not a scarred mistake from the mud. I was born from the very bloodline you tried to bury, Aminata said, holding her ground. The real mistake was thinking fire can't rise from ashes. The Queen Mother's eyes darkened. You think this ends with a wedding? You'll bring ruin. The nobles will rebel. They'll split the kingdom to keep you off the throne. I don't need a throne, Aminata said quietly. But I won't step aside either. I didn't crawl through fire, bury friends, and bleed, in silence just to let someone like you decide my worth. The Queen Mother walked closer. Her fingers touched Aminata's scar. You did this to hide, and now you wear it like a badge. How pathetic. Aminata didn't flinch. It reminds me who I am and what I survived. The Queen Mother raised a small dagger, its tip glinting in the fading light. I could end you right now, she whispered. You already tried, Aminata said calmly. And you failed. A sound echoed through the temple. Footsteps. The prince stepped in, sword drawn, flanked by guards. I told her not to come alone, he said, his voice like thunder. But she never listens. The Queen Mother's hand trembled. You came to kill the only woman who ever stood for something real, Moana said. You lost your crown the moment you started fearing the people. Guards moved in. She didn't fight. She just laughed. They will never love her. They already do, Aminata said. Not for perfection, but for truth. That night the Queen Mother was exiled, sent far away to the edge of the kingdom, stripped of her titles, her voice silenced by the very court she once ruled with. Iron, but not everyone was at peace. Some nobles withdrew support. Whispers of rebellion grew louder. And yet, as Aminata stood on the palace balcony, watching the moon rise, she knew the storm had passed, but the war for hearts had just begun. The wedding day dawned with a strange stillness. The palace, usually buzzing at sunrise, felt like it was holding its breath. Birds chirped less. The sky was painted in pale silver, as if even the sun wasn't sure whether to shine. It had been weeks since the fire, since the temple, since the Queen Mother had been cast out. But her shadow still lingered in every corner, whispering doubts into ears that already feared change. But Aminata, she was no longer afraid. She sat in front of a small mirror, not the royal kind framed with gold and glass, but a simple one she had brought from the orphanage. Her reflection stared back. A young woman with fire in her eyes, a scar that no longer shamed her, and a soul stitched together by pain, truth, and grit. Zuba came in with a smile, carrying a soft white veil. They say when you walk through the gates today, she whispered. "Even the statues will bow." Aminata smiled, her hands calm in her lap. "They don't have to. I'm not here to be worshipped." "No," Zuba agreed. "You're here to be remembered." The wedding ceremony was held in the central square instead of the royal hall. Prince Mwana insisted the people should witness it, not through rumors but with their own eyes. No barriers, no distance, just truth. Thousands gathered. Farmers, fishers, nobles, orphans, soldiers, teachers, every kind of soul filled the space. Drums beat slowly. Flowers lined the path from the palace to the altar. The air smelled of marula fruit and rosewood. When Aminata stepped forward, the crowd went silent. She wore a dress woven from cream-colored silk, decorated with symbols from her village: a sun, a river, a flame. Her scar was not hidden. It stood proud on her face, untouched by powder or cloth. And when she walked, she didn't float like royalty. She walked like a woman who had carried stones on her back and still made it here. The people watched, and then they began to clap, slowly at first, then louder. Then cheers rose, not because of beauty, but because of courage. Prince Mwana waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving her. He smiled like a man who knew he'd made the right choice long before anyone else saw it. The priest spoke words of union, of honor, of struggle and strength. And when they were told to say their vows, Mwana turned to her and said, "I don't vow to protect you from pain. I vow to stand beside you in it. I don't promise a perfect life, but I promise one we build together." Aminata's voice was strong and clear. "And I vow not to be your shadow, but your storm and your shelter. I vow to never hide again, and to let my scars remind us both how far we've come." They were crowned not with gold, but with simple woven circlets made by village hands, one from her orphanage, one from his homeland. When they kissed, the sky finally broke into full sunlight. The wind danced. The people cheered so loud it shook the ground. But just as they turned to leave the altar, a rider came tearing through the crowd. He was dust-covered, breathless, panicked, a soldier. He jumped down and knelt before the prince. "Your Highness," he said. "Forgive me for interrupting that, but a ship has docked in the eastern port. Flags we don't recognize. They demand an audience with the crown." Prince Mwana's face turned serious. "From where?" The soldier hesitated. "They claim to be from the Lost Islands, and they're looking for the girl with the scar." Aminata's heart skipped. The crowd fell silent once more. She stepped forward. "Then tell them she's no longer just a girl." She took the prince's hand and looked out at the horizon. Whatever was coming next, she was ready. Because she was no longer hiding, she was the storm, the flame, the scar that would never fade and never be forgotten.